You're listening to Release Your Resistance with Beltran, episode 94. Welcome to Release Your Resistance. This is Bex. The only reason why any of us don't have what we want in life is because of our own resistance. Right now, I'm learning how to recognize and release my resistance, and this podcast tells you how you can release your resistance so that you can live the exact life that you want. Let's get started. Let's talk about mantras again. Today's episode is a follow-up to last year's episode about my favorite mantras. If you haven't listened to it yet or recently, I shared the ways that I come up with my mantras and some of the ways that I use mantras in my everyday life. Last year's episode isn't a prerequisite to hearing what I'm sharing today, so you don't need to turn this one off now. You can go ahead and listen to the full thing and then go ahead and find last year's episode about mantras at bexb.org/mantra. Or you can get a link to last year's episode from today's episode at bexb.org/more mantras. When I re-listened to that episode from last year, I was pleasantly surprised to hear myself outline the 4 different ways that I usually come up with my mantras. That explanation made me wonder, is that how I came up with these most current mantras that I've been using lately? The answer is no, not really. Everything has shifted slightly. Seasons change, mantras change. Last year, as I considered my favorite mantras, I noticed I used them more as affirmations. This year, as I think about the phrases that readily come to mind for me that I am now categorizing as mantras, I think of these phrases more of answers to questions that I frequently ask myself. My mantras have evolved a little since last year. I do still notice myself using my old tried and true mantras pretty reflexively, and the reason for the mantra update today is that I am noticing these new answers popping up for me so regularly. I am noticing that they come to me differently than before. In fact, one of these mantras specifically isn't so much like an affirmative mantra statement as it is more of a theme or a concept that I frequently remind myself of and try to put into practice. The mantras that I told you about last year seem to be a little more intentionally decided upon and then thoughtfully repeated, either due to a specific circumstance or event, or because I specifically wanted to feel a certain way. The phrases that I'm sharing with you today seem to have bubbled up for me as I have been living my life this year. One of the reasons that they have come into my awareness, and now I'm labeling them as mantras, is because of how often I find myself thinking about them and using them, usually in response to my own inner dialogues. The first one is a 3-word expression, and sometimes I change the pronoun depending on how I'm using it. But the most basic version of it is, live my life. This one came to me as an answer to a frequent question that I remember contemplating so often in the beginning of 2021 when I was reconsidering and contemplating what I wanted for myself. I was thinking about what I wanted for my business, how I wanted my life to be, what I should be spending my time doing. And I would frequently ask myself, if I'm not overtly trying to grow my business, how will I be spending my time? I would wonder to myself, if I'm not going to focus on this thing that used to be so important to me, what am I going to be focusing on? The answer that often came to me, most likely from my inner wisdom, is live your life. See, there's an example of how the pronoun changes depending on who is speaking, even though it's always me who is speaking. But sometimes when the answer is coming from my inner wisdom, the pronoun becomes you. When I remind myself of that mantra and I tell myself at a more surface level, not quite as deep as going into my inner wisdom, then the mantra becomes live my life. This mantra has been so reassuring for me. It has been an invitation to slow down, let go, allow, release, not worry, not try to control, not try to predict the future. And remembering this mantra has definitely helped me to not have quite as many expectations for myself and not have quite as many judgments as I might have had in previous years. As I'm thinking about how I use this mantra now, I am remembering different snippets of conversations and discussions where things that I used to be completely interested in and motivated by, such as goal setting and strategic planning and coming up with an outline of something, then following it to the letter, are not quite as important and don't need to be quite as specific as I used to think they needed to be. This year, 2021, has really showed me that I don't need those planning and control implements as much as maybe I relied on them in the past. This mantra gives me the freedom and the space to experiment a little bit more and to notice and slow down and observe a little bit more than maybe I had ever allowed myself to before. Live Your Life has been the answer to a question, both to myself when I ask myself, what am I going to do? What should I be doing right now? How will I spend my time? How do I want to spend my time? The answer to all of those questions in my internal dialogue is live your life. It's been an answer that I can readily call up in conversation with friends and family when people ask me, what are you doing? What are you up to? What are your plans coming up now? A previous version of me, who was more concerned with goals and plans and achievements and numbers, that person would have needed to show that I am making progress or I am in the process of creating something. She would have wanted to prove that I am reaching goals and I am hitting targets. But doing the surrender work that I have been doing, allowing and letting go, now with this new mantra, I love just to answer when someone asks, what are you up to? What are you doing? I'm living my life. That is a 100% complete answer. I don't need to justify it. I don't need to attach outcomes to it. I don't need to show how worthy that answer is because of a number of clients or episode downloads or a bank account balance or the number of hours I've worked. I really can just give myself and anyone who's curious the answer. I am living my life. The second mantra also has the word life in it, so maybe there's a little bit of a theme here. This one has been a mantra for me for quite a while now, and again, this one usually comes to me in the form of an answer to a question. When I'm having some doubtful or worrisome questions that sometimes pop up in my mind, this mantra is my reassurance. I may have referred to this or alluded to it last year when I was talking about how I repeat to myself frequently that I have plenty of time, plenty of money, and plenty of energy. So this mantra is right in alignment with that belief system. I think I really solidified this as a mantra for myself in the early months of 2021. I was making a little art project for my new office that I had just moved into, and the art project involved using some of my favorite phrases, expressions, and words. So this mantra made it into the art project, and it is set for life. The reason that this comes up as an answer to some worrisome or doubtful questions is sometimes, as I'm sure we all do, I have some less than helpful suggestions from the judgy part of my brain. It might say things like, you're not doing enough, you should be doing more, you should have more, your business should be further along than it is by now, you should have more money in your account by now, you should have made different investments, you shouldn't have left corporate, you shouldn't be running your business the way that you are right now. Annoying, right? All of these kinds of thoughts and worrisome questions or suggestions also come up when we get unexpected news about our household or our lifestyle, such as needing a new roof, or when the air conditioning needs to be replaced, or an unplanned tax bill. When I notice these worrisome or judgy suggestions or unexpected expenses, the answer that I have trained myself now to give is, I'm set for life. I can remind myself, I've got this. I don't need to worry about money. I don't need to worry about the future. I am set for life. And I really believe that I really am set for life. I intentionally choose to really believe this. I want to point out that it would be equally possible for me to not believe it. It would be equally possible for me to believe the opposite, which is I am doomed for life or I will never have enough. And I think there are people in this world who consistently think those thoughts in answer to those judgy or fearful questions that might creep into their minds in those dark moments. I just really consider myself lucky. Having this belief as a mantra is further proof that I am set for life because I have intentionally programmed my brain to answer that way and to believe it. That belief reassures me and keeps me thinking the way that I want to think. It keeps me acting the way that I want to act from a place of abundance and possibility instead of fear and scarcity. One fun note to add onto the I'm set for life mantra is the delightful phrase that I say to myself whenever I receive any type of payment or refund or unexpected money, or whenever I find even the smallest amount of money, I tell myself, money keeps coming to me. I write that on the top of my calendar at the beginning of a new month. I mentally repeat it to myself whenever I see an interest payment on one of my bank accounts. I love to find and create and point out evidence to myself that money does keep coming to me and I am set for life. The next mantra is probably my most used, both internally in my own dialogues with myself and externally as I talk with friends, family, and I would guess my clients are probably really accustomed to hearing this mantra. I probably say this multiple times in every single coaching conversation, and the mantra is, I have so many options. This one is so fun for me because it is also a departure from the former me's belief system. In the past, I probably believed that there was a right answer. My past self was very concerned with finding the smartest answer or at least the most efficient solution. You could call this dichotomous thinking. It's very binary. I was probably thinking there is good and bad. There is right and wrong. It either works or it doesn't work. And now I see that there are so many variables besides just those polar opposite pairs. I now see that yes, maybe there is a right answer, but maybe it's not only one right answer. Maybe there are 100 or 1,000 or 1 million right answers. And giving myself that opening and that abundance of possibility is also liberating and freeing. Believing the mantra, I have so many options, helps me to get out of the mindset of worrying about choosing the right one or the wrong one. Believing in endless options eliminates the fear of missing out on the best solution or the most efficient option. When I think to myself, there are so many options, it really removes my own internal resistance of being afraid to choose or being afraid to experiment. Thinking that there's only one right way keeps me from going all in on something for fear that it's not the right thing. And knowing that I do have so many options removes the necessity to have the smartest answer. What do you think? Can you feel the openness and possibility of believing that there are so many options for you? The last mantra that I want to tell you about today is the one that is not fully formed into a mantra. It's more of a concept that I rephrase and repeat to myself, and I pull it up often in a lot of different scenarios. This is more of a way that I like to act versus an exact set of words that I use in answer to my own questions. This concept does stem from an expression that I heard earlier in this year that really struck me, and I just haven't ever gotten it out of my head ever since. I keep on finding ways to bring it up and use it, and I even mentioned it earlier this year when I did the odds and ends episode. The phrase is, you can never get enough of what you don't really need. And I found that phrase to be so true and such a great reminder, and it is so applicable in all kinds of different situations. So here's how it works. If someone is snacking out of boredom, they can never get enough handfuls of chips or popcorn or whatever it is. They can never get enough of that food to cause them not to be bored. That's the expression. You can never get enough of what you don't really need. What our snacking friend needs is not food. They need something to engage them or entertain them or activate their own thinking. They do not need food. So the more food that they shovel into their mouth is not going to solve the quote-unquote problem that they might not even be aware that they have. So that's an example of how that phrase plays out. You can never get enough of what you don't really need. And this works in a lot of different things. In relationships, if you're looking for validation from other people, and so you're people-pleasing and you're trying to get people to like you, and you want admiration or adoration from other people, that is not really what you need. What you really need is belief in yourself and self-love and self-worth. Even if the entire population of this planet told you personally and specifically, you are worth it, you are good, you are great, you are beautiful, you are talented, you are smart. If you do not personally believe those statements about yourself, all of those sentences are just like putting those chips in your mouth when you're feeling bored. The thing that you need is your own belief in yourself. As much as you try to get that from other people, that is still not answering what is missing. You can never get enough of what you don't really need. That whole explanation and example is just background information to set up the actual mantra that I wanted to tell you about that I'm using and loving. And it is the opposite of the concept that I just shared. And here it is. I can give what I want and need. When I notice that I want something, let's say that I want appreciation, I try to look for where I can give appreciation. Yes, to myself, of course, sure, why not? I can look for ways that I can appreciate myself, but more specifically, I try to look for where I can give appreciation to others. How can I give what I want and need? When I'm thinking I want or need to feel appreciated, I know it's time to think about who I am appreciating so much lately. Who am I so grateful for? Maybe it's time that I send a text or write a card or even just make an entry in my gratitude list. I can give outwardly what I want inwardly. Here is an example that's a little bit more precise. If I want people to recommend my podcast more, I can consider how I can give that. I can decide to give more podcast recommendations of other people's podcasts to my friends and family, since that's something that I want. I want people to recommend my podcast, so let me do that for other podcasters. I use this concept in so many different ways. I use this in relationships. I use it in my business and in networking. I use this in doing favors. If I wish people would do me favors, I try to think, what favors can I do for other people? I don't have any statistics or data to show you that this results in me getting what I want or need. I haven't even really tried to track this or notice if it really does happen or not. But what I do know is that this concept makes me feel like I am doing something instead of nothing. If I notice myself wanting or needing something, when I give that thing that I want or need, it puts me in a position of feeling like I'm taking action. It shows me that this thing that I want does exist because I'm doing it and it is possible. It reminds me that if I am able to do this for someone else, then of course someone else is able to do it for me as well. And sometimes giving what I want more of even illuminates for me why I might not be getting what I want or need. For example, Maybe what I want is more potential coaching clients. I know there are people out there listening or aware of me, watching me, and they're thinking of having a coaching relationship with me, but they just haven't started yet, or they're just not sure. They just haven't taken that step. And I really want them to reach out and have a sample coaching call with me, or take the next step to schedule coaching. If that's what I want, then I can think to myself, how can I give that to someone else? Is there a service or a product that I have been watching from the sidelines? Is there something that I have been thinking about trying or starting? Am I curious about a service that I haven't taken the step to reach out or figure out how to get started? And when I realize that, I can actually take that step, and then I can learn so much. I might learn that someone else's process is so easy, and that causes me to think, is my process that easy? Or I might find their process confusing or hard to get through. So that makes me wonder, is my process confusing or hard to get through? By taking that action of giving someone else something that I want, I benefit by getting a great exercise in user experience. Would you ever consider giving what you want? Can you see how this could apply in your life and at work or in your relationships or in business? Do you have any resistance to giving what you want more of to someone else? What about any resistance to any of the other mantra examples that I shared today? Do you tell yourself to just live your life? Do you know that you are set for life? Do you agree that there are so many options? Or what mantras have you been using, and what mantras are meaningful to you lately? Are there any mantras that you would love to see printed on a notebook or journal? I am currently working on designing my own planner and calendar for 2022, and I think I'll put Live Your Life on the cover. So let me know if you want to be planner buddies with me and get one for yourself. And I also have a few notebooks with various mantras already created. For example, I have a prompted workbook called Love Your Life, which is also based on another podcast episode that you could listen to. And there are other blank notebooks. One says, Happy, Thank You, More Please. There's one that says, Whenever possible, be kind, and it's always possible. You could get a really cute pink and leopard looking notebook that says, Go get it, wild child. Plus there's one called I Am Magnetic, which is a wonderful mantra to frequently remind you of how attractive you are. If you have an idea for a mantra that you would love to see on a notebook, let me know. You can email me at hi@bexby.org or leave a comment in the show notes for this episode at bexby.org/more mantras. That's MOREMANTRAS. Thank you for listening today. I hope you enjoyed hearing about more of my favorite mantras. I'll talk with you next week. This has been Release Your Resistance. Thank you for listening. If you like this podcast, make sure you're subscribed and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Also, think about someone who you know who would love this episode and share it with them. There should be a share button on your app if you're listening to this on your phone. If you'd like to continue this conversation one-on-one or in real time, come visit me on my site at bexby.org to see how we can work together.